All right, let's sink our teeth into a true titan of horror, Bram Stoker's Dracula. But we're not just talking about a simple vampire story here. We're going to dissect what makes this novel such a masterclass in Gothic horror, and really, a chilling roadmap to the fears of an entire era.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at how Dracula dragged ancient terror kicking and screaming into the modern world. Then, we'll actually build the monster from the ground up, look at the very real societal fears he taps into, and break down the genius way the story itself is told. And finally, we'll talk about why this book still has such a powerful bite even today.
And I really want to drive this point home. This is so much more than a monster of the week tale. What Stoker did was take this ancient dark folklore and just unleash it on late 19th century London, which was this hub of progress and modernity. And in doing that, he created this incredible cultural snapshot of the darkness that was lurking right under the surface of so-called civilization.
Okay, so first up, how did Dracula create a truly modern Gothic nightmare? See, the genius here isn't just the spooky castle and the bats. It's taking that ancient, almost mythic terror and dropping it smack dab in the middle of 1897 London. Right away, you've got this incredible, terrifying clash between a superstitious past and a supposedly rational, scientific present. And that conflict, well, that's where the real horror begins.
Now, to really get a grip on that clash, we need to understand the blueprint for the monster and his world. Stoker wasn't just making things up as he went along. No, he was using a powerful, time-tested formula, one straight out of the classic Gothic horror playbook to build his terror from the ground up.
And I mean, he hits all the big ones. You need a creepy, crumbling castle in a faraway land? Bam, you get Castle Dracula. You need a terrifying supernatural being? Well, hello, vampire. A charming but totally predatory villain? That's the Count in a nutshell. And of course, you can't have Gothic horror without some really visceral violence, like, staking and decapitation. It's a proven recipe for fear, and Stoker is a master chef.
But here's the key takeaway. Castle Dracula isn't just a spooky set piece. It's a symbol. It represents physical rot, moral decay, deep dark secrets. It is the physical embodiment of an ancient evil just waiting to burst out into the modern world. It's darkness you can touch. And at the heart of all that darkness, you've got the vampire himself. So what makes this creature just so fundamentally terrifying? It taps into this core Gothic fear, the absolute unnatural horror of something that should be dead, but isn't. It's a monster that completely blurs the line between life and the grave, and there's something about that is just deeply, deeply unsettling to us.
A monster is only as scary as the world it threatens. And that brings us to the real heart of the matter. The terror of Dracula isn't just what he is, it's what he represents to the Victorian society he starts to take apart piece by horrifying piece.
This is where the novel just ignites. You've got the heroes, and they're armed with all the latest and greatest technology of the time. I'm talking typewriters, phonographs for recording diaries, even cutting-edge medicine like blood transfusions. But here's the thing. Against Dracula, all of that is completely useless. They have to throw away their modern tools and turn to ancient superstitions, things like garlic, crucifixes, and holy water.
And this right here is such a classic Gothic theme. It's that terrifying moment where all the logic, all the science, all the progress you put your faith in just fails. And you realize that the only things that can actually save you are the old, irrational beliefs your modern world told you were silly.
At the center of this whole battle is blood. Blood is everything in this novel. It's the literal life force, of course, but it also becomes this huge, powerful symbol for, well, everything the Victorians were nervous about. Sexuality, family bloodlines, and most terrifyingly, contamination. The fear that something pure could be corrupted from the inside out.
And that fear of contamination is pointed squarely at the women in the novel. Their bodies literally become the battleground where the fight between good and evil, between purity and corruption, is fought. This really taps into some deep-seated Victorian anxieties about female sexuality, about women gaining independence, and about how fragile they thought moral purity was. Okay, so we've got the monster and the society he's attacking. But now we have to talk about the structure of the book itself, because the horror in Dracula isn't just in what happens, it's in how the story is told. Stoker uses this brilliant, fragmented way of telling the story that is designed to make the reader feel just as paranoid and scared as the characters.
See, we don't just get one narrator telling us what's going on. Nope, we have to piece the truth together ourselves, like detectives, from this collection of different documents. Jonathan Harker's secret journal, letters flying back and forth between Mina and Lucy,
strange newspaper clippings about a shipwreck, a ship's log, the list goes on. So, you have to ask, right? Why do it this way? Why make it so complicated? Why not just tell the story from one person's point of view?
Well, the reason is just genius. It creates this almost unbearable suspense. We only know what each individual character knows at any given moment, so we feel their confusion, their dread, and their rising panic as they slowly, painfully try to put the whole horrifying picture together. In effect, Stoker turns the reader's own mind into a Gothic space, full of shadows, uncertainty, and things you can't quite see.
So finally, this brings us to the biggest question of all. Why does this book, written way back in 1897, refuse to stay dead? What is it about Dracula that gives him such a lasting bite, that allows him to keep haunting our collective nightmares?
I think this really sums it up perfectly. The timeless power of Dracula is that it's the ultimate story of the modern world being forced to look its own repressed fears right in the eye. All those anxieties that Victorian society tried to push down, fears about sex, about outsiders, about disease, about the unknown, they all come bubbling back up in the monstrous form of Count Dracula.
And that leaves us with one last kind of chilling thought. If Dracula is a vessel for the fears of his time, what would he represent if he showed up today, right now? What modern anxieties would he embody? Fears about a pandemic? About misinformation? About technology we don't understand? That's the enduring genius of the novel. The monster might stay the same, but the terrifying face he shows us in the mirror is always our own.